welcome to our show, Healthy Living. I'm Kayleen Cornell, Health Education Coordinator for the Purchase District Health Department. According to the Center of Disease Control in 2010, diabetes affected 25 million people. It was estimated there are 79 million American adults aged 20 years and older with pre-diabetes. Diabetes is the leading cause of kidney disease, heart disease, and stroke, along with other complications. And it is the 7th leading cause of death in the United States. Today, we are going to talk about these alarming complications and facts, and what we can do to prevent, as well as keep your diabetes in control. I'm joined today with two of our diabetes educators from the Purchase District Health Department. We have Julie Muscarella and DeAnna Leonard. Why don't both of you tell a little bit about yourself before we start? Julie?
I'm Julie Muscarella. I'm a registered dietitian. I'm a certified diabetes educator.
I'm DeAnna Leonard. I'm a registered nurse and I'm a diabetes educator.
Great. Well, thanks for coming on. This is very prevalent in our community as well as is nationwide. As you know, I mentioned earlier, all of those statistics are pretty scary to think how diabetes is really growing, and it's just definitely in our community, like I said. Well, first of all, let's just start off with what is diabetes? Could one of you explain kind of just generally what it is?
Well, diabetes is a condition that happens in the body when your body's no longer able to process the food that you eat. We typically will use the energy from the food to be able to get up and do the things that we need to do. And whenever an important hormone called insulin is not able to help out, or it's not even present in the body to help you process that energy from the food, then that energy, which is in the form of sugar, stays high in the blood, causing high blood sugar.
Okay, so how would someone know that we have it then?
Well, there are some symptoms that are associated when your sugar is high. It could be typically that you are thirsty all the time, you're hungry all the time, you feel tired all the time, you just don't feel like you have any energy, and you have frequent trips to the bathroom. That is your body's way of saying there is something not right, and it's trying to compensate for that. It's trying to take care of that. But many times there are people that have no symptoms at all, or those symptoms are so subtle they can attribute it to something else, such as feeling tired all the time. Maybe they're just working too hard or not getting enough rest.
Right.
Or when they're going to the bathroom a whole lot, well, I'm just older and maybe that's just what I'm going to have to accept. So many times those symptoms are so subtle because they happen over many, many years that they can be missed. And that's why we have about 1/3 of our population walking around with diabetes. They do not even know it.
You can also have blurry vision associated with high blood sugar. So that's a really good early warning that something's going on that's different.
So that just shows how important it is to know your own body, and when you see some changes to, not maybe self-diagnose, but maybe go and talk to your doctor about, there's just something here that doesn't seem right,
Yes.
Are there certain people that are at more risk, or could anybody be at risk?
So when you're talking about at risk, you're talking about people with type 2 diabetes, and there are certain things that you do kind of look for. And the good news is that you can prevent it. We'll talk about that later. So I want to share the good news first. So when you're talking about the risk factors for type 2 diabetes, or maybe who might get type 2 diabetes, it does happen as you get older. So if the older you get, the more at risk you are. If you have a mother, father, brother, or sister that has diabetes, you're more at risk for type 2 diabetes. What is your weight for your height? If you have a higher weight for your height than you need to, then you could be at risk for type 2 diabetes. How active are you? If you're physically inactive, if you're not active at all, it could put you at risk for type 2 diabetes.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things. The other thing is, if you're a man, you're more at risk for type 2 diabetes. If you're a woman and you've been diagnosed with gestational diabetes, you're at risk for type 2 diabetes. Or if you're somebody who's been diagnosed with pre-diabetes, you're at risk for type 2 diabetes. So the good news again is that you can prevent it. And there's certain ethnicities that are at higher risk for type 2 diabetes. That's African Americans, Hispanics, Latinos, also Asian Americans, and Pacific Islanders. So if you're in any of those, you do need to be aware, talking to your doctor, absolutely knowing what your numbers are, and be aware of if you're in the zone that maybe you're at risk, or if you're having pre-diabetes.
Yeah, yeah. And when you say if your parents or brothers and sisters, does it matter like what age they got type 2 as to how it would impact you? For instance, if your parent got it much older in life or got it younger, does it matter or not?
There's no prevalence. If you have anybody in your family that has type 2 diabetes, you could have it. And I would be always aware that that could happen to you at any age.
Yeah, yeah, wow. Well, you were talking about type 2, and I know, there people, it's just hard to understand what is type 1, what is type 2. Would you be able to kind of explain that?
Yes. Type 1 diabetes typically occurs in children and young adults. It happens suddenly, and they're still trying to determine the exact cause, but they do believe that it is some kind of autoimmune response, that when a person gets infected by with strep throat or another infection or battles through another illness, that as the body is trying to fight off that illness, it actually kills some of the good cells in the pancreas that makes the insulin. So when that happens, then all of a sudden there's no more insulin. And remember, I told you before, insulin's very important for us to have on board in our body, for us to use that energy from the food. So all of a sudden they're eating, but there's no insulin in their body, so therefore they can't use or process that food to use for energy. Their blood sugars go very high, they get very sick really fast. With type 2 diabetes, it happens much slower, and they can see a higher blood sugar level over a long period of time. And their body can still make some insulin, but for some reason that insulin just is not doing its job anymore. It forgets what it's supposed to be doing, so it might be present. And then after such a long time with diabetes, your pancreas can get to the point where it doesn't want to make as much insulin, and can even get to where it's not making any insulin at all. So both result in the same situation. The blood sugar gets higher than what it needs to be, and that can be very dangerous for the body. So I have people ask me all the time, well, which is worse to have, type 1 or type 2?
Right.
And there's really not any one worse. They can both be very dangerous when they're not controlled.
Right, yeah. Well, as you've mentioned, some of the risk factors that we could be aware of, what other way can a person know whether they have diabetes? Is there?
So there is, how do you know if you're at risk? There is a risk test, and the risk test is actually on the website www.diabetes.org, and it's the type 2 diabetes risk test. And I would encourage everyone to go on and take it and see if they're at risk. And if they are at risk, they do need to have a conversation with their healthcare provider that they're at risk, and they help them keep up with their numbers, and that they know what their numbers are.
Right.
And so what about diagnosing diabetes? So when normally people without diabetes, you want your blood sugar to always be under 100. After you eat, your blood sugar is going to go up a little bit, but when you first wake up, it should always be under 100. If your blood sugar is somewhere between 100 and 125, then your doctor might say to you that you have pre-diabetes, or the fancy term is impaired fasting glucose. if your blood sugar is 126 or above on 2 different occasions, that means that you have diabetes. Or if your blood sugar is at or above 126 and you have those symptoms that DeAnna was talking about, then you would be diagnosed with diabetes as well. There's some other tests as well, but that's how you would know.
Yeah, yeah, okay. What would you say, is there, you know, certain ways to really prevent? Because, you know, we've talked about, you know, the cause and, you know, what it is and how, you know, that we should be more aware. You know, what can we do? Because you said that is the good news. So
yes, the good news is
it's always good to talk about good news.
That's right. So research has shown that 58% of people who just lost 5 to 7% of their body weight and had physical activity of about 150 minutes a week were able to either prevent type 2 diabetes or delay the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes.
Wow, and that's not asking much. That's very doable.
Yes, very doable. And again, just 150 minutes per week. And so basically you lose about 5 to 7% of your body weight, you begin activity, and it doesn't have to be the word exercise, it could be activity. That could be, that's moving your body, that's doing laundry, that's, you know, washing your windows, that's washing your car. Gardening, exactly. And, you know, it is good if you can get your body to a point where, you know, you're doing something aerobic, like you know, you're really trying to push your body a little bit more than what it normally would be.
Right,
but again,
getting that heart rate up.
Getting that heart rate up, that's right. Of course, with the doctors, okay. But that's very, very doable. And again, 58% have shown prevention of the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, as well as, or the delay or the onset of type 2 diabetes. So.
Okay, that's, I know I've heard before that, you know, if you're going for a walk, a brisk walk or, you know, a quicker walk, like we said, getting your heart rate up. But if you think of it, if going for a walk like you're late for an appointment or you're late for your job, you know, it's a little bit quicker walk that, you know, keeps your heart rate up a little bit more.
Yeah, and what I like about what you've just said is that it can be short periods of times. You don't have to go out and do 150 minutes all at once. It could be 10 minutes or even 5 minutes walking into the store, walking around the mall. We have a lot of people that every day that we see at the mall walking that are getting those minutes in and keeping cool, and you know, it's really a healthy thing.
Sure, yeah. Instead of spending time driving around the parking lot trying to find that, you know, that closest spot, you know, they could park quickly and take a walk.
That's right.
There's a lot of things. Well, I know we have on here, it's, you know your numbers. That saying is used often in our community. I don't know how much people really take it to heart, though, and to really go, that's personally for me, I should know my numbers. Why don't you talk about, you know, what numbers, what should diabetics need to know?
Well, typically when we think about diabetes, of course, blood sugar comes to mind first. And Julie just shared with you some of those important numbers and what they should be. Someone without diabetes should not have a blood sugar over 100. Someone with diabetes, the American Diabetes Association recommends that they keep their blood sugar somewhere between 70 and 130. And that seems like a large range, but that's being that everybody's different. Everybody's under different care and management, so they need to work with their healthcare provider to see what would be the right number or goal for them to stay around, because there's some people that wouldn't even need to be down below 80 of a blood sugar. Also to see how our body has been handling the food that we eat and what our blood sugar numbers have been over the past 2 to 3 months. Their doctor can order an A1C test. That's a hemoglobin A1C. Like I said, it averages what the blood sugar's been over the past 2 to 3 months, because it looks at the memory on our red blood cells, and it's reported in a percentage. And so the goal is to always be below 7%. And that's another important number that they can use also to see if their management is the right treatment for them. Are they on the right medication? Is their diet the right one for them? Are they being active enough to manage those blood sugars in a healthy and safe range? So then beyond our blood sugar numbers, we still have to remember blood cholesterol and also our blood pressure.
Blood pressure too, yeah.
Yes, that's right. Blood pressure is just as equally important to manage and watch. They recommend that someone with diabetes not have a blood pressure over 130 on the top and over 80 on the bottom. So
that's higher than what a normal blood sugar should be.
Yeah, they typically know that people with diabetes are going to already be struggling with some other coexisting problems such as high blood pressure and high cholesterol. So they do give it a higher goal. So the lower the better and the easier on their heart. People with diabetes are at 2 to 4 times more risk for heart disease and stroke. Even when your sugar is just a little high in that pre-diabetes range, you're already showing changes in your body that could put you at risk for heart disease and stroke. So keeping that blood pressure 130 over 80 or less, either by managing with your diet and watching the salt in your diet, taking medications as prescribed by your doctor will help with both the blood pressure and the cholesterol.
Yeah. What, you know, when you say they're 2 to 4 times higher risk for heart disease and stroke, what is going on with, you know, the diabetic who already has some alteration with the pancreas? What else is happening in their body then that causes that increase?
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. One thing I like to ask those that come to our diabetes learning sessions is, I say, where does the blood go in the body? And of course they respond, everywhere. And I'm like, well, that's everywhere that diabetes can affect the body. As the blood sugar is high above normal levels in the blood vessels, that changes that blood vessel from a healthy, flexible vessel to a very rigid, injured vessel, inflamed vessel. Those injuries and those inflammations allow plaque to settle in and cause some blockages. And also we know that the higher the blood sugar is, the thicker the blood is. We have an illustration, we show those in our learning sessions with some blood bags of simulated blood, and the higher the blood sugar goes, the thicker the blood is. So I said, imagine the higher your blood sugar is and that thick blood, and your heart's trying to pump that through the vessels, that just adds to that on top of those blockages. So you can really understand then why they are at 2 to 4 times higher risk.
Yeah,
so, and then if they have other risk factors such as smoking, and we certainly really talk to them every session, class session, about smoking cessation, because smoking and diabetes is a dangerous combination, as well as putting them at higher risk with the heart disease and stroke. We know now that smoking can put them at risk for diabetes itself.
Even secondhand smoke can make someone more insulin resistant. In other words, it can make your insulin not work the way it needs to in the body. So not only smoking, but secondhand smoke. Smoke that you receive from somebody else's smoking. So it's the best thing you can do is to stop smoking regardless of what health issue you might have.
Right, yeah. Well, and as you mentioned, your blood is thicker. Well, carbon monoxide from the smoking already thickens the blood from smoking, and so you think, boy, you have those two. You can see where the walls of the arteries just start to really, wear down. It's as far as once you have diabetes, the most important thing is to keep it, in balance and to keep it in control. What's the #1 thing that you would, recommend for keeping it in control, would you say?
Well, I think there is what we call a tripod of things that are equally important. So think about a tripod, and a tripod has 3 different legs. One leg is healthy eating, one leg is activity, one leg is medications. So all of those work together in balance to keep your health at a healthy level. So
I like that. You're not just focusing on one thing, because there's a lot going on in your body like we talked about. So you can see why you would need that.
Absolutely. And I love the way you said balance of control, because what DeAnna and I are talking about, what we see every day are people that are getting their diabetes under control. They're getting their just a little bit of weight off. I'm talking 5 to 7% of their weight off, and they're seeing the results. Their blood sugars are becoming in control, and it really is very important that they understand it is like a tripod, 3 different legs, all equally important to get right for them. And it's individual. What might work for me might not work for DeAnna. And that's why we love for people to know the things that they can talk to their doctor about, to bring those things in right balance.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about one of those legs of what we need to get into control, and that's the healthy eating. How, you know, once you're told you have diabetes, you know, you just want to go, you know, what am I going to eat now? You know, I don't know what to eat. So what is the best?
People with diabetes can eat what other people eat, and it's a healthy plate, whether or not you have diabetes or not. So my grandmother, when I was growing up, she absolutely had a healthy plate, and I'm sure that's what helped keep her healthy as well as the rest of us. So what I'm trying to say is it's not that different than what everybody needs to eat. So when you're looking at a healthy plate, a lot of times what research has found is if you use a smaller plate, you're going to have smaller portions. If you use a smaller bowl, you're going to have a smaller portion.
Sure.
So the key word there is portion size. So regardless of what size plate you have, what size bowl you have, what size utensil you have, we need to go to smaller portions.
Sure.
We have absolutely supersized everything. And so smaller portions. And having diabetes, one thing you have to know is what works for you. As a dietitian, we say all foods fit. That means any food can be in someone who have diabetes, just like anybody who does not have diabetes. However, what foods are favorable and what foods fit for you. And so how you would know that is by listening to your body, taking that blood sugar an hour and a half to 2 hours after that first bite of the meal. And the American Diabetes Association wants that level to be under 180. So what foods fit for you? The other thing is about carbohydrates. People who have diabetes know that carbohydrates are the foods that make the blood sugar go up the highest. So part of it is as that healthy balance of carbohydrate. And just like a car cannot make it to Texas and back without having a fuel having fuel along the way, our body needs fuel throughout the day. Sure. And normally we suggest that you have the carbohydrates in 3 different time zones, if you will, around breakfast, around noon, and around evening. And your body needs carbohydrates as well as other food groups.
So people should not be just so concerned about the sugars, you know, because isn't that always the first thing you think about? You know, diabetes, oh, you have to stay away from sugars, but it's also the carbs that they need to be familiarized with.
Kayleen, if I were to tell you that you could never have another bite of sugar or another, you would not like me very well.
Oh, I know. You'd crave it.
Yeah, exactly. So what we like to do is we like to talk about label information. We like to talk about portion size based on, you know, how many carbs are in this portion size, so people can fit into their diet, things they normally eat that they like to eat.
Yeah.
And of course, we love the things that you find in farmers market. I think everybody needs to go down to the farmer's market. A lot of times I ask the people, you know, did you go out today and pick them? Yes. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I was out in the field picking whatever, eggplant or corn or the beautiful vegetables, the tomatoes, the cucumbers.
Oh, I know. Yeah,
I know.
not only do you have the taste, but it is just, you know, it's so much better.
It is. So what we do encourage is those nutrients that help you fight not only your things like your healthy vegetables, your tomatoes, again, the things that I just mentioned. They actually have fighting nutrients in them. They're going to fight off cancer. They're going to help your diabetes. They're going to help heal the damage that may have been done before.
Yeah.
So,
what we've talked about what is happening in our body with diabetes, but what other health problems do we see that come along with diabetes?
well, regarding a healthy plate, regarding blood pressure, we're talking about sodium or salt. So it's been shown that an increase in salt intake will increase your high blood pressure. So people with diabetes, actually anybody over the age of 50, need to be concerned about their salt intake. And so sodium or salt is in a lot of processed food, and so that's one thing that we can all be aware of. The other thing is everybody needs to be aware of their saltometer. What we're talking about is how things taste. The more we get used to salty items, the more we're going to want salty items. So if you start dialing down that, what we call a saltometer, you're not going to crave as much salt.
Sure.
And eventually you'll actually get to know the fresh taste of food again.
Yeah. What resources would you say someone could go to get more information if they had questions?
You can go to the American Diabetes Association. That was www.diabetes.org. There's also a National Diabetes Education Program, that, if you just Google National Diabetes Education Program, there are a lot of free resources on there as well for those with diabetes, those wanting to prevent diabetes. And then the American Diabetes Educators, that's the American Association of Diabetes Educators, which is www.diabeteseducator.org, will help you find a diabetes educator in your area that you can go and personally visit and see, and help you come up with a plan that works for you in managing your diabetes.
And that's important, and I know there are certain, we have, I believe on the screen that it shows, the different things that are coming up, and we'd love to have the people come and learn more and just get as much information as they can to help them manage their diabetes, or help someone in their family manage their diabetes. So as we have talked about diabetes today, I hope you have learned more about what diabetes is and how to manage it, and the importance of keeping diabetes under control. I hope you've also learned who is at risk for diabetes: the obese, the minority populations, and those who have a family history of diabetes. We've also talked about how to prevent type 2 diabetes, and once again, it shows healthy living is a choice for us. I want to thank you for watching our show today, and also thank you, DeAnna and Julie, for giving so much good information, and I know the events that are coming up are going to be great events for the people. So thank you again.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.